I'm Mark Seifter.
And I'm Linda Zayas Palmer.
And this is Arcane Mark.
Hello everybody, and welcome to our second Build-A-Hazard Workshop. Build-A-Hazard Workshop 2, the marvelous Build-A-Hazard Workshop. Today we're all going to be working together to create a new hazard, which undoubtedly is going to be more complicated than an average hazard because we are doing it as a group.
It might not be.
Maybe
we'll see. So, whenever you start building pretty much anything, but that also includes a hazard, as you can see on page 74 of the Game Mastery Guide, you want to start with a concept. So, what is our concept for this hazard? Everyone, you can post in the chat some concepts for a hazard, and we will have a vote to see what kind of hazard we want to build based on the concept. Everything else flows from there.
We have Icefall/Avalanche. That is a nice classic hazard.
Wither King says love is the concept.
Love! Exclamation point.
Fire Ants Pit Trap.
Fire Ant Pit Trap.
Yes.
Woof.
So it's probably a pit trap with fire ants at the bottom rather than a pit trap belonging to fire ants. I don't think they would make a pit trap.
Probably, yeah. I mean, we're considering things that people could throw at their PCs. So, yeah, Fire Ant Pit Trap, that is devious.
Mm-hmm. We also have a gun run emoji. Corridor of Death.
Corridor
Of Death.
of Death.
It doesn't have extra E's. It's of death, not death.
Okay, I'll be sure that I get all of the spelling and capitalization in the same way.
Ego Drain.
Ego Drain.
Portal, but the game portals.
Portals like the game Portal.
You see a cake, but it was an illusion. Roll to disbelieve.
That could be part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Mana
Mana
Storm.
Storm. 1 part mana, 1 part storm. Mana Storm. Underwater Rip.
Like a Riptide?
It could be, or it could be a ripoff where you go to like a Locathos city and they're like, oh, +1 striking weapon, oh, only 5,000 gold. That's a hazard too, right? Oh yeah, it is a Riptide.
I will clarify that.
Could also be where your pants rip while you're underwater, but they were part of a diving suit, so
yeah.
it starts flooding into water starts flooding into your suit. That could also be an underwater rip. Illusory Spikes. All right.
Illusory Spikes. We've got 9 ideas so far.
We got another one. It is a Pilfervine, a sentient plan that sneakily steals stuff.
Plant, presumably.
As well as snares.
Pilfer vine that steals your stuff.
And then snares everywhere is the last concept.
And
let's do a vote at this point.
Everywhere.
Yes, snares everywhere is important to that one. All right, so let's take those and do a vote. Let's see. There's 11. Should we give them 1 or 2 votes?
Why don't we give them 2? Because 11 is a lot compared to the number of folks we've got here right now.
Pick your favorite 2 and put it on in there, and we will keep track of your votes and determine what our concept is for our marvelous hazard that we are building.
I'm going to go ahead and add in a 12th there because the 12th came in right after the radioactive hazard.
Sure enough.
12 is a nice round number.
12 is a nice round number. So, radioactive hazard is on there now. Alright, so we have 2, 7, 3, 4.
2, 7, 3, 4.
12, 7.
12, 7.
3, 10.
3, 10.
Eltro meant 3 for one of the 2 or the 7.
Elf,
Probably the 2
did you
because
mean
the
3
2
instead
is
of
closer
2 or
to 3
3
on the
instead of...
keyboard. Oh wait, no, 2 is right. Okay, never mind. So don't switch anything to 3.
Okay.
Eltro was confused, and there aren't even any of these 12 traps that are hazards that are a concept of being confused.
Mm-hmm. So I have so far 1 2, 2 3s, 1 4, 2 7s, 1 10, and 2 12s.
That's correct. You've got it, Linda.
Okay, we just got another row here.
7
7 and 9.
Okay.
4 and 12.
7 and 10.
7 and 10.
Okay. Well, it looks like a radioactive mana storm.
Yeah, it looks like a radioactive mana storm to me too.
Okay, so we're gonna do a radioactive mana storm. Oh, we got 4 and 9. Does that change anything for us here?
4 is now tied with 12.
Okay.
Which one was 4?
4 is a corridor of death, which kind of is different. It's easy to combine a radioactive mana storm that like has mana or magic radiation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in any event, radioactive. Radioactive is tied. Mana Storm has won at this point, unless we get another late coming vote. So we're gonna do a Mana Storm. We can probably add in radioactive as a bonus because it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
So let's do that. It's got magical radiation.
Yes.
That's definitely something that I've run in my games before. I know in like my high school group, we had an Azer character who turned blue because of magical radiation, among many other things.
I mean, this radioactive... Phil Benz points out this radioactive mana storm could take place inside what is considered to be a corridor of death because of it.
It could, but corridor of death as a concept that Zathos described is a very fleshed out concept of like a bunch of traps in a row, and I think that would wind up taking over as the concept. Whereas radioactive is kind of a soft concept that's also an adjective that you could sort of apply to something else, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. So I think then this could be something that you might use as a part of the building of a corridor of death, but there would need to be
maybe it's sometimes used in corridors of death when you can build them around the mana storm because of the way the magical radiation possibly like dispels magical protections. So Zathos even mentioned putting anti-magic somewhere in the corridor of death. So maybe any proper corridor of death includes a radioactive mana storm.
Yeah. So that way we can include pieces of all these
it would be
ideas.
part of a corridor of death, but you'd need to have other hazards to get the full corridor experience.
And I mean, the thing with and if you have dispelling magical protections, then radioactivity is all the more dangerous.
This is also a hazard you might encounter in the mana wastes between Gab and Nex because of the fact, and maybe the Spellscarred Desert because of the fact that there's a lot of magic going in there, and they can create some mana storms.
So for a hazard, I think the next step we should figure out here is are we simple or complex?
So we have to start with the concept first. So we know it's a mana storm.
Concept, yeah.
We know it's a radioactive mana storm. So is it just a pulse of magical radiation? It feels like if it's a whole storm, it may be a complex hazard. But the question is this actually, and maybe we should have thought about this before we voted for it, is this actually a full-on storm to the point where it's actually not a hazard that you can disable, but is more of an environmental disaster that you just have to survive? Right?
Oh, yeah,
because,
that's true.
If you look in the core rulebook, on environments, they're natural disasters, and they are not considered a hazard. They include like avalanches, blizzards, earthquakes, floods, sandstorms, excuse me, tornadoes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions, and they're wildfires. They're not considered hazards by the rules, mainly because hazards always have generally have a way to disable them, and you're not gonna really disable a tsunami. It's gonna tsunami.
There's some more thoughts in the chat here.
Yep. Let's see. The chat says, what effect does a radioactive mana storm create? Wild magic, suppressed magic, complex device, simple effects. Storm suggests crazy weather effects, magic rain, magic lightning, magic thunder.
So, because this could be something where instead of being over a large area, if we want to maintain it as being a hazard, it could be something that is coming out of some particular source, and that if you can cut off that source, then it stops.
That's true, but is it storm? If it just is like something shooting it out, I mean, it maybe still could have some of the concept of the storm, but I'm not sure if it has a story of the storm. Now, there could be a way that you like somehow use survival or magical theories to disable it by like counteracting the magic of the storm temporarily.
Yeah, that's true. If we want it to be a full-on storm that's affecting the sky and the area,
it doesn't sound like it's a trap.
Yeah.
Anyway, it would, if it is a hazard, it's going to be an environmental hazard.
Yeah.
Most likely, a very magical one. So, let's see. Yeah, it's going to be like a smaller storm cloud that you could actually counteract that comes up. So I'm liking what people are talking about here, crazy weather effects, but also possibly messed up magic. So let's go with that. So we're gonna take everything that everybody said just now in the chat, and we're gonna put it into this hazard. So it sounds like it's not just a one and done. It is a complex.
It's complex because it's going to affect you for more than just one instant.
That's right. So it sounds like also that it has unusual magical effects, but also weather effects, and that disabling it is going to probably involve like maybe a very difficult, very high proficiency survival, or a like a magical skill that is involved with it, like Arcana.
Yeah.
So that being the case, this sounds like it is definitely not a low level effect.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see, what level are people thinking for this? So if we go like really high up, it could have some of the effects of a Storm of Vengeance, which admittedly, even though a Storm of Vengeance is a 9th level spell, part of that is that it's very large area and it only takes your sustain for up to 1 minute of doing its things. So like a high level spellcaster, that's only one of their actions each round, or if they have effortless concentration, none of their actions to keep doing the Storm of Vengeance. Whereas if the hazard was like mostly doing the Storm of Vengeance, it wouldn't necessarily have to be 17th level.
Oh, there's an idea too where if the magic rain, if you don't have like an umbrella or something else to shelter you from having the rain falling on you, then it's a lot worse.
Yeah, that could definitely be part of it, like the acid rain ability of Storm of Vengeance.
Yeah.
All right, so
how high level are we going to be going with this thing? Because that will set a lot of the scope of how powerful it is. That's right. So, I mean, I think clearly if null magic is part of what it could possibly do, then it is. So are we talking null magic like dispel magic?
I think maybe dispelling because it's a storm. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, Philip Benz is right that it has a very, very varied damage. It's a huge area, and it happens every round for Storm of Vengeance as only one sustained action. So it could definitely...
We don't have to go up to 17th level. It could
definitely have a Storm of Vengeance style effect without being 17th level, because if we look on the actual like complex hazard... Storm of Vengeance is... like... if looking at it, it's possible for like a 9th or 10th level complex hazard if with the right other specs to do the the amounts of damage that you could see in Storm of Vengeance.
So I see a 10 and a 15.
Uh-huh. And that 9 or 10 would be like minimum if we just wanted to take the exact Storm of Vengeance. We obviously can also adjust the amount of damage to work.
I didn't realize the current complex are almost all even, while current simple are odd.
How could you not have realized that, Linda? You wrote all the ones that are in the Advanced Player's Guide. Or I haven't said the Game Mastery Guide.
Yeah, but I guess I was trying to mix them in, so that's probably because of me then. I didn't remember that anymore.
Grass of the Damned is simple, and that's odd.
Wait, no, I did do.
And Jealous Abjure is simple. That's
maybe
odd.
maybe in the
core rulebook. Yeah. So maybe then you saw that and then wrote the opposite.
I know. I was trying to fill.
Yeah. Who knows?
We have another vote for 10th level.
Okay. It's all Linda's fault.
Just blame me. It's fine.
Okay.
So with 2.
So let's do 10th level.
Yeah, 10 sounds good.
I think we could do this at 10th level. So.
All right. So we've got a level.
This is a complex hazard, and here's its routine. At least. Here's what I think its routine is.
Based on what folks have said in the chat?
Based on what folks have said in the chat. Here's what... time, but this is like, we're building a hazard, we're not gonna make our own table of random effects. So, its routine is that it swoops in at some speed, or it may even like be seeking out the PCs or their magic, right?
Well, we can also look at its trigger and reaction as well.
Yes, but I wanted to start with the routine.
Sounds good.
Maybe the trigger and reaction is that it
because you said swoops in, so that sounded like the trigger and reaction.
But its general routine, I think, is it does one of the damaging effects of Storm of Vengeance. It tries to dispel something, and it does a Rod of Wonder. That's what I think its routine is, based on a conglomerate of... Just because the Rod of Wonder already exists and has a D100 chart, that we don't have to make a new one. And Philip Vance has some good ideas as well, which I think a lot of it is covered as a possibility by Storm of Vengeance plus Rod of Wonder plus Dispelling, but the combinations in Philip's list are like more thematically attached to each other in a way.
Yeah.
So that would be its routine, but it also has radiation. So yes. It probably also gives an affliction of a long-term radiation poisoning from exposure.
Is that pop in at the trigger then? Or is that... Because that feels like it's more of a continual exposure rather than the trigger might just be... It appears and then it rolls into initiative and then yada yada. It may not have some other thing it does on its reaction.
What we can do is... that... It's... When it does the... Let's see, there are 5 different types of Storm of Vengeance thing it can do, and 2 of them are non-damaging.
I'll make a note that the spell is based on the dispel is based on the magic rain, so that if you had shelter and then the rain wasn't hitting you, then you would be safe from that part of the reason.
Right. So we could also say that the heavy rain and wind option from Storm of Vengeance, if that gets rolled randomly by the hazard, that is the one that exposes you to the affliction of the magical radiation.
Yeah, so if heavy rain and wind is rolled, you are also exposed to radiation.
And then the
thunderclap's got the deafening magic thunder.
Yeah, but these last 2 don't do any damage, and normally the caster gets to pick in Storm of Vengeance, and they're never going to pick Rain and Wind or Thunderclap unless there's a very good reason for it. So we should also add something to the Thunderclap. Let's see. So...
Is the Thunderclap what does the Rod of Wonder?
No, I was thinking
Rod of Wonder every time,
each round that it does a random Storm of Vengeance effect, it dispels something, and then it does a Rod of Wonder.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Which also, Rod of Wonder, I think, has a spell on it somewhere. So
then you get extra.
You never even know what's going to happen.
What do you guys think for another effect on the...
let me look at some of...
so Magical Thunder is deafening.
So, like, Philip had an idea for the Magical Thunder that maybe it also makes people hallucinate what they hear.
Oh yeah, that sounds good.
So that after the Magic Thunder, even if you if you fail and get deafened by the magic thunder, you don't realize you're deafened, but you start hearing like random or even mixed up versions of things that are contrary or possibly even opposite of what the person is trying to tell you or say.
Yeah, and that can cause some serious confusion.
Adam Generator points out it can also cause synesthesia, where it changes your senses from hearing to touch and all of those things. That's actually a great idea.
Oh yeah, that's a good way to mechanically model that.
So it could do both the deafening that changes what you hear to something else and the synesthesia as well. So that way it's putting a pretty big debuff on people.
So then you're like, yeah, so then you're like, all right, so then you're like, I'm feeling that what you're saying is, or I'm smelling that what you're saying is that we should rush forward and attack. No, don't rush forward and attack.
Synesthesia is a scary debuff, but it's not that bad against this hazard, because only the lightning from Storm of Vengeance and some Rod of Wonder effects does it actually matter that you have -3 to AC and reflex saves, but if you fight a monster who knows about this hazard and combines with it, then it can be really scary.
I guess one thing here is when it rolls, does it roll for a particular round that's how it hits everybody, or is everyone who's exposed to a different aspect of this hazard? So that you've got more of a spread. It
probably does one of these 5 Storm Vengeance effects, and then one Rod of Wonder effect that has to choose a creature within 60 feet. And then for the dispelling, it maybe chooses a creature randomly as well.
So you're thinking that each of them hits a different random person?
Well, the storm hits everybody.
Yeah. But does the storm say, okay, I'm doing acid rain on everyone this round?
So let's think about this. So maybe to go back up to Philip's idea about the rain being very dispelling, maybe if you get the rain and the wind, that also the dispel hits everyone that round and you're exposed to the magic radiation. If it does the thunderclap, then it's the synesthesia and you hear the wrong things if you fail against the deafen. And otherwise, it dispels one random person. Rod of Wonder is one random person, which could be the same, but could be not because it's random. And the Storm of Vengeance hits everyone. So if you get Acid Rain, everybody gets Acid Rain.
Sounds good. Oh, man. I feel like this was invented by a Protean.
It could have been. Wither King suggested there's a Protean Lord floating on top drinking a martini. So,
oh my god, I didn't see that, and we were just thinking the same thing at the same time.
So
I'm gonna say that it was invented by Proteans.
So the reaction that triggers is probably that like it senses magic, which the PCs have by level 10.
Yeah.
And it zooms towards them because this magical storm, this mana storm, probably seeks out magic.
Yeah.
And so the way, also on its routine, if the PCs try to escape, the storm is gonna fly after them, and it's probably like not the big Storm of Vengeance that has the enormous cloud, but it probably is a large burst. Maybe not as much as the 360 foot.
So then I guess at the start of its routine, if nobody's within its range, it moves. Then it does all.
Then it does those 3 things.
Yeah. So how fast does this thing move?
Well, let's see. How big is it? Like, Storm of Vengeance is either 360 or the bigger one is 1,000 foot burst.
120?
A 120 foot burst? Yeah, so maybe this is a 120 foot burst, and maybe it moves up to 240 feet when it's chasing after things. And so it sounds like when you're trying to disable it,
is this really a 10 still? If it's that big and chasing everybody,
it's very big and it's chasing you. But if you look at it, it really doesn't do that much damage. It's at like Acid Rain's 18. That's actually a little lower than the 26 for complex damage. Now it does other stuff.
Yeah.
And if you're very unlucky, it could also throw a fireball on you. But it also might make you turn blue.
Yep.
And it's possible that the only thing that happens is that you get synesthesia, turn blue, and something gets dispelled. and you don't take any damage.
That's true.
So, it is a fast-moving cloud. You probably disable it with Survival or Arcana, I guess.
Yeah, this definitely doesn't feel like a nature-type storm.
So...
And high proficiency totally makes sense.
The idea would be, it takes a lot with Survival. Maybe Arcana's a little easier. What you're doing is, you're trying to... you're not necessarily actually destroying this weather phenomenon, but you are making it lose coherence temporarily, and or making it lose the trail of your magic, so it just drifts away. What do you think?
Yeah. I think that Survival would probably be the one where you make it lose your trail and confuse its tracking, and Arcana would be the one where you make it temporarily lose coherence.
That makes sense.
How many... people are saying, so there's a suggestion that maybe Occultism more than Arcana because of just how weird this is.
It is definitely a weird effect, but it's
Sword
also...
of Vengeance is also a primal spell.
Yeah, Sword of Vengeance is a primal spell.
So this is kind of based off of
the Rod of Wonder and the Storm of Vengeance combined have very matter-based effects. Mm-hmm. And given that primal is the opposite of occult because it has vital and material essence, that occult has... I was thinking occultism because you guys mentioned it before, but then I was thinking which effects we picked, and they're fairly arcane. Mm-hmm. Like, all the things for the Rod of Wonder are on the arcane list.
Also, if it's based on a protein,
maybe it allows
arcane or nature, maybe.
Well, protein would be divine, but maybe divine it allows our occultism as well, but it's a little harder.
Yeah.
So what I'm thinking is, for the Survival, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it's actually not that hard of a proficiency, but you have to hit everybody in your party with it. You have to succeed for each person.
Yeah.
So it no longer tracks them with the Survival. Or you attack the storm directly with your Arcana, or potentially also Occultism, because... and disrupt its coherence with those checks. And you may need probably need more than one success.
Yeah.
How many successes do you think we need?
Maybe 3 for the Arcana or Occultism, and then the Survival one is you gotta make it not pay attention to each person within its range, and it only stop if it can't see anybody else.
That makes sense.
How far can it sense people?
How far can it sense people?
To go try to pursue them. Is it that, like, maybe it can only pursue as far as if there's someone within its movement, and if there's no one within 240 feet, it doesn't really sense you anymore? Or can it just keep chasing you forever? Or is there, like, some sensory range that it's got?
Maybe its sensory range is twice that. So maybe it's if you're outside of 480 feet, which is twice 240 feet. So, like, basically, if it would have to take two whole turns chasing you and you didn't even move before it could reach you, then it doesn't sense you anymore.
There's a question. When you say attack the storm with the Arcana, do you mean something like a counteract check, like using Dispel Magic?
So here we're talking about using the Arcana skill as to disable, in the same way you can use Religion to exercise a haunt. So you're using your principles of Arcana and the way that magic is supposed to work when it's working correctly to try to piece together some of the magic in there. I think Zathos mentioned it's kind of like doing a mini ritual to disrupt the storm, and that's pretty accurate. The same way you would do a little exorcism with Religion on a haunt. Linda had some good descriptions of that in first edition in Horror Adventures, with a lot of, like, weird magical hazards or haunts that she created in Horror Adventures that sort of became some of the baseline towards some of these hazards that are very out there in second edition. And I think you also had that you could use, like, knowledge planes on Player's Instability.
Yeah, there were ways to damage things. Yeah, because the idea being to try to use that chassis on a variety of different.
That's right. So let's see. Obviously, this thing is not very stealthy.
It's
not like, I mean, you might not know that it's coming because it's a storm. It's not as easy to find as that orb of Ravagund's blood.
No, it's not. So maybe
it's probably the lowest,
DC?
the lowest of the low DC, so like 25.
So that means initiative plus 15.
Yeah, initiative plus 15. Because it blows in with a particular speed, even though it's pretty easy to see it. And its disable is probably, given that we are making you do 3 and we're making you do 1 for everyone in the party of survival, and they don't sort of synergize with each other. You either are doing one of those or the other. It's probably not like
that high.
It's probably not extreme.
Yeah, so we could go with
maybe
high because its perception's really low.
Maybe it is.
Or maybe a little below that, since you have to do it for everybody.
Yeah.
30 maybe.
So, yeah, let's do 30. But which one would be easier, the Arcana or the Survival? Because you have to do a lot of.
I would say maybe the Survival would be a little easier. So maybe.
So we could do Survival on each person so that it can't notice you and that it drifts away.
Yeah. So do you want to do what, like Survival 28, Arcana 30, Occultism 32?
Yeah, we could do that, and we can say that the Survival to do that is possibly to make it so you don't detect that it can't notice your magic is probably what do you think? Is that going to be expert?
Yeah. Well, looking at sort of the minimum proficiency suggestions here.
It says that the hardest one would be Master.
Master, and then Moderate would be
and
Expert.
And the Arcana maybe doesn't have a minimum proficiency, so anybody can do it try to do it with Arcana. Mm-hmm. Because if you do that one, you're going to need to get 3.
Yeah. And what about the Occultism? Does that require some degree of training? I feel maybe maybe they should both say trained so that you at least like have some basic knowledge.
For Occultism?
Or Occultism and Arcana. Although I guess if you're not trained, you're not going to make these DCs anyway, so it's kind of a moot point.
Well, no, I mean, we're not going to do untrained, but yes, those could be trained. Or, at that point, it doesn't matter, right? Because if you're untrained, you probably won't make it.
Yeah.
But it matters if it's expert, and the Survival is probably expert. Yeah, Phil, that's right. The Survival is to basically, on each person, make it so that the storm doesn't detect their magic, so that eventually it'll just drift away or stay where it is if everybody has that up.
We also need to fill in the, we're also going to need to fill in the Dispel information. Like what level Dispel is it using and what's going on with this counteract.
That's correct.
And stuff like that.
We need to know all of its stats. We also need some of its other defenses.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really seem like something that you can attack.
So
by smacking it.
Yeah, it's probably not a physical thing that has hit points. So we don't have to worry about that. Mm-hmm. We know it's damaged because it's from the Storm of Vengeance and the Rod of Wonder.
We'll need its DC.
Its DC... let's give it not the extreme. Let's give it just the high DC of 29. It doesn't need an attack roll. Probably.
Yeah, it shouldn't for any of these things. Cause they're...
well, I guess Rod of Wonder has one, so it may need it. So we can just give it plus... we can give it plus 23, which is the complex attack.
Sounds good. And so it has a DC and an attack roll.
Yep. And we could give it plus 19 for its counteract check with Dispel Magic. And I agree with Wither King. Just a base Dispel Magic, unless it rolls the rain that we used from Philip's idea, where the rain means the Dispel Magic hits everyone. What
level Dispel?
Oh, probably 5 because it's level 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then... last but not least is we do need some statistics for the affliction of the magic radiation.
Yeah.
So that probably also has a DC of 29, fortitude, and
So what are we going for? Like a sickening type thing?
Yeah, I was thinking as well that you become sickened and you can't remove the sickened until you get rid of the radiation. It could have some, like, weird... There's all sorts of magic effects on you. So maybe stage 1 is Carrier. Stage 2, where you have, like, no effects yet. Stage 2 is Sickened 1, and you can't remove the Sickened.
Yeah.
And stage 3 is... stage 3 is also sicken one, you can't remove this sicken, so you have to put that again. But then also, every time you cast a spell, you have to make a flat check or it turns into a Rod of Wonder. I mean, not the actual rod, but like the effect becomes the Rod of, randomized on the Rod of Wonder.
DC 5 flat check?
Well, Philip was, it came into us afterwards, but Philip was typing it at the same time I was saying it out loud.
11 seems reasonable, or 10 or 11 seems reasonable.
Because they can't hear us until a little while after we said it. Right, but I was going to say DC 11.
Alright, so there we go.
Philip and I just have a mind meld on this.
Woo.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
is this a curse?
Is this affliction a curse? So normally a radiation is a disease, but this may be a disease and a curse like Mommy Rod.
I feel like it is, because it's not just a disease to be casting random spells.
Yep. And so after the one where it's sicken 1 and do that Rod of Wonder thing, it's probably like the next stage could be sicken 2 and do that Rod of Wonder thing. And then the stage after that is still sicken 2, but now the DC on the flat check or your spell as a Rod of Wonder is 16. So it goes
stage
up.
5.
Yep. And then stage 6 you collapse into like magic.
Yeah,
which
that makes
means
sense.
You're effectively dead. If we want to make it really like radiation, there would be a stage right before that where you're like, I'm fine!
Yeah, that's alright. Why don't we... Maybe when someone collapses into magic at stage 6, they spawn another one of these storm hazards.
Potentially. Although that could potentially create a lot of them.
You're right. We shouldn't do that.
If enough people do that it reaches critical mass, and they're near each other, it combines to form one of the storm hazards. And we don't say how much is enough, so that's up to the GM. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that... Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, because then you have a way to... You have a way that these hazards reproduce without having to necessarily create a growing a problem of vampires and shadows and other things like that just multiplying out of control.
Exponential growth! Thanks for gifting those subs, Alftro.
Thank you.
Alright,
I think we got this. I've got some solid notes. I will clean these up a little bit.
Quite an interesting hazard.
It is a very interesting hazard. I'll clean these up a little bit, and then I'll post them on our workshop chat on
Huzzah!
Arcade Mark, tiny.cc/Arcade Mark for everybody to
I will
use.
put that in the chat. I'm sure a lot of people already know about it, but it's in here. Tiny.cc/Arcade Mark.
Or hazard reproduction, and Wither King hazard reproduction. Why not with the hazard?
This is how you get a mana waste.
Yeah.
I'm sure Nex was. Sure Nex was like, we have to defeat Geb, but he has a lot of necromancy.
Well, Mark.
Wait a minute. I'll make a hazard that reproduces when it runs into magic. That won't create a mana waste.
Mark, when a mommy mana waste and a daddy mana waste love each other very much.
That requires there already are 2 mana wastes. We're talking about generating a mana waste from 0 mana wastes to 1 mana waste.
That's true.
Alright.
Alright.
So, let's say bye to YouTube.
Bye YouTube!